All right, so the class is recording now. So I'm going to start kind of just quickly going over, actually, no, not quite. This is Monday. So I have to go over the assignments due for this week. And I want to start with the project, which is so relevant to everything that's happening. So we're going to incorporate current events with our lecture for this week, just because our lecture is on hiring, training, and subculture within policing, and you've seen problems with all of that and everything that's occurring today. And not that it's only been a problem today, but obviously it's being highlighted with current events. So let me share my screen for you. There we go. So I'm just going to go into week 3, into our assignment. So this you won't be able to see. This is the essay that I eliminated for this week. There's just a 10-question quiz based on this week's lecture, so that one's not too big of a deal. It's not timed, so if you aren't sure about one, just go back into the lecture and look it up. You can have the lecture open separately before you open the quiz, so you can look back if you need to. The check-in, same weekly check-in you have every week 3 for every course, so it's not about the content, it's just about how you're feeling about the course, what your expectations are. So those 2 things are simple. But I do want to cover the project piece that is due. Now, just looking at the week 3 assignments folder, this doesn't give you much information. You do need to go back to the original directions handout from week 1. So I'm going to get to that in a second. Actually, I can just go there because it should have. I'm just going to go to the announcements because I have it here. Now, you said you did have the chance to read the project last week, right? You did say that you had the chance. Oh, hi Haley. Sorry, I just saw that you were able to get on. That's great. I'm just about to start going over the project and the part that's due this week. So, Michelle, you did say you had a chance to read it last week, right? The directions in general? I think. Okay. I was trying to remember if it was you from this class or if it was one of my other female students in my night class that was talking about their directions to the project. The 2 of you have similar voices, too, and not being able to see my students is so much more difficult to distinguish. But and hey, Haley, I'm glad you were able to log in. So the first part for the project is due on Saturday, so I want to go over the project in general anyway today, just going over the foundation and then the specific things that need to be done for Saturday. I'm just going to shrink all this down. Okay. So the project is worth 20% of your grade, and like I said, it can't be more relevant than what we have going on right now because it's focused on training, dealing with multicultural issues with law enforcement, working within diverse communities. I mean, it's ethics, everything that needs to be being talked about today is what goes into your project. So this first part just goes through the different outcomes of the course, the program outcome, which is what you'll put it in within your e-portfolio, and the institutional outcomes. So I'm not going to go over that portion just because it's just giving you information about the outcomes. The scenario I want to start with, so it is regarding officers being involved in unarmed shootings, and so it's focusing more on training. The project is really focused on a training plan that you're putting together to propose to a department to provide, hopefully, a way of reducing some of these issues. So it's looking at trying to minimize deadly force, and the concerns are that the use of deadly force is the result of a lack of understanding of cultural diversity. So We also recognize that, sorry, I'm just going to mute you guys. I think I can do this. Mute audience, there we go. Just so you guys can hear me without any feedback. There we go. Okay. If you need to ask a question, feel free to unmute yourself. You should be able to do that. But just while going over this, that way you guys won't hear other things. So we're also looking at the role media plays. And these are all things that we can be talking about based on current events as well. So the scenario, as a result of recent shootings involving unarmed suspects, it's imperative additional training be mandatory. Studies have demonstrated the more training an officer has, the faster he or she is able to jump to important elements of a situation and read them more accurately. The highly trained officer knows what to look for amid a situation that may seem chaotic to lesser trained officers. Good training also produces better emotional control. The highly trained officer tends to make better decisions because he can focus on what he needs to do rather than on reacting impulsively and emotionally. The importance of a high ethical standard in police work is impressed upon aspiring officers from the very first days of police work. Police officers deal with a lot of scrutiny by the public. In any case, it's up to the officer to be above reproach in both his public and private life. So that's just kind of the basic background for what your project is, which, again, that's the reality of today. So now specifically, you are an officer for the Bryant County Police Department for this. That's your role. You've been tasked by your supervisor to create a training proposal for new officers on the need for additional training post-academy. So this, I had a student that took this class with me last time that was focusing on like recruiting, and this project specifically is saying this is for officers who are already in the department, who are already working, because this is saying that it's post-academy training. So this isn't about recruiting. This is not about what additional things they can do while training recruits. This is about officers who have gone through the academy, who are now working as new officers. I mean, they're rookies, but they are officers. And what kind of training can be provided after the academy is over. So that's where you're starting. Now, the requirement says the proposal will suggest that officers should have a mandatory number of hours of training in 2 areas that you feel will assist them in doing the job more effectively, safely, and ethically. One of those areas is given to you. The focus of one area will be placed on cultural diversity. So you have to research that portion, because it's telling you you have to pick 2. You have 2 areas. One of them is cultural diversity. Your other area of training will be your choice based on a need you feel the BCPD has, such as defense tactics, dealing with individuals with mental health. I mean, it really could be anything of your choosing in relation to, our background of unarmed shootings, okay? So this is post-academy training in 2 areas, one of which is cultural diversity, the other of which is an area of your choosing. And then you'll be getting my feedback as you submit different pieces that you can then incorporate into the final submission. So requirements and formatting, again, this is still all general. This is about the project as a whole, and now I'll start getting into the different parts. So your portfolio project, you do have to use APA formatting, which means you have a cover page. They call it a title page here. You have to use Times New Roman or Arial font, 1-inch margins. It does have to be double-spaced. It should say that here. It doesn't say double-spaced, but that is an APA format requirement, is double-spacing. Page numbers in the top right corner, and you'll also have to have a references page, which it also doesn't include here. Now, because this is a 100-level class, the format of the citations is not something that's strictly graded, but it's something that you need to get used to making sure that you have citations. Now, like I said, this week is the first part that's due, so this is the focus for this week's piece. So it says, to operate successfully, law enforcement agencies need to ensure their officers perform appropriately in the field. Okay, very clear for today. Thinking of training areas that need to be strengthened, submit a description detailing your areas of focus within your proposal. And again, one of those areas has been chosen for you. You have to identify the 2 areas. One of them is cultural diversity, and then the other one of your choosing. that you would like to focus on for the training. Okay, so that's the first part is of what you have to consider for your training proposal for this week. The description of your plan is just identifying the 2 areas, again, one of which is cultural diversity. The second part of your training plan description is just why you're choosing those areas, including cultural diversity. Even though technically you didn't choose it, that one's a required area. You need to explain why you think it's important to include training in cultural diversity as well as the other area that you chose. So this piece here, this part, there are actually 2 things for part 1 that have to be submitted Saturday or by Saturday. This is the first part, the part that just has you identifying the 2 areas of training and your reasoning for including both of those areas, why you think they're important for this post-academy training. So that's probably 2 paragraphs. I mean, we're not talking about something really lengthy for that for this week. That's the first piece, because notice it says for week 3, part 1 is a training plan description and resource analysis. Those are 2 separate things. The second part says using the template provided in week 1, critically evaluate 3 of the sources you plan to use. For each resource, include a short summary detailing how it will be used in your project. Okay, so that's the second part. Now I'm going to go back over to week 3's assignment folder because that is where the template is. It says go to week 1. We were already in week 1, and for some reason, unless maybe it may also be in week 1, but it's in week 3. So if you go down to the training plan description and resource analysis here, you see this little link for resource analysis. This is the template to use for the resource analysis portion of part 1. So it tells you by the end of week 3, that's always Saturday at 11:59 p.m., and it gives you the pieces here. Critically evaluate 3 resources you plan to use for your portfolio project. You're encouraged to use the virtual library, cite the articles in APA style, and then include a short summary detailing how it will be used in your project. So it has 3 boxes, one for each source, since it says you have to use 3 sources. The first part is space for you to put an APA formatted reference for your citation or for your resource. And then the second part just says how will this resource be utilized in your portfolio project. And under that, you'll include the short summary detailing how you plan on using that resource. That's basically, the information that was valuable and how you can use it in your project. So for this one, you have to basically start your research. I mean, this is something I used to have students do in a slightly different format prior to being blended. We would call this an annotated bibliography, because what you're doing is you're actually starting to prepare your references page already by including the APA style reference. But then the annotation part, for what we call an annotated bibliography, is a description of the resource and the information that's valuable for your project. So they're calling it resource analysis, but it's very similar to an annotated bibliography if you've ever had to do one of those for an English class or anything like that. So once you move beyond this part, this resource analysis will assist you as you're fully developing your training plan, which is what's going to be due in 2 weeks. Okay? So any questions so far? So I know I just went over quite a bit when it comes to the project. So for this week, the 2 things that need to be done, and I'll show you how you can submit it in a second, because they are really 2 separate documents. You're going to open this template and then save it for yourself. And, sorry, I'm just going to mute you again, Haley. You're going to open this template and then save it separately, for yourself, so that once you complete these 3 resource analyses, you'll be able to submit that into the Blackboard Dropbox. And then you'll separately have a Microsoft Word document that has a title page, like a cover page, and be an APA format, even though, like I said, it's probably only going to take you about 2 paragraphs. Okay, this part is not looking for, intro, conclusion. This isn't a full essay. This is just a brief training plan description. So you're looking at just identifying those 2 areas and your reasons for choosing them, okay? And then when it comes to the resources and what you're actually looking up, you're going to be doing some research into the 2 areas of training that you want to focus on for your police department. So those are the types of resources you're going to be trying to find. So you're going to try to find resources regarding cultural diversity training for police. Okay, that's one of the types of resources you're going to look for, because that's the mandatory training area that you need to research. And then whatever training area you choose for the second one is the other area you're going to research, that type of training for police. And you might say for new police, you might say you can use different search terms to try to find different resources. So you have to find 3 resources. You have 2 different areas. So, you find a second resource for one of those areas. You may end up having more than 3 resources by the time you finish the project, but at this point for this week, you need to find 3. So that's what's due for this week. That's part 1 to kind of just get you started on the project. In 2 weeks, you actually have to have your rough draft completed for the training proposal as a whole, and this has a much more structured format. This is more of an essay style. I don't think they actually tell you, they don't give you a number of words or pages for this. I'll have to look at the rubric to see if they are more specific for that when we get to week 5. But eventually, what your training description is for this week, you'll turn into a more full training proposal that, again, in the role play that you're in, you're going to be submitting this to your supervisor to try to get it approved for training for your department. Okay, so you can see, and I always recommend reading the entire project. Don't just start at week 3 and say, okay, that's all we are working on for now, because if you scroll down to week 5 and you see, okay, well, we have to discuss how ethics are going to be addressed in each of those training areas, so maybe one of my resources for week 3 is going to be something on ethics within training or something like that. Again, I'm just trying to give you some ideas. And then it talks about how would you measure the effectiveness of the mandatory training. Okay, well, maybe that's one of the areas you want to research as well, how to measure effectiveness of police training. If you want to try it, maybe you find something, a specific resource for that. And then looking at how other departments may have successfully implemented cultural sensitivity training. So those are areas that you can research for your project, because if you look at week 5, part 2, this is the major portion of the project, and it's telling you that these are the things that need to be addressed in the body of the paper, okay? And then week 7 is just you make any corrections that I recommend to the rough draft for the week 7 final submission. So there's not a lot of parts to this one. Some of my projects have many, many more parts that we have to do, but for this project, you just have what's due this week with your training description and resource analysis, and then you just have your rough draft and your final submission. So those are the only parts for your project for this. Okay, so questions, concerns, comments, anything regarding the project for this week or beyond? That's okay. That's okay. Okay, this is the portfolio project directions. So there are a few different places you can find it. I did post it right in the announcements. So if you click on announcements, the one that says Spring 2020 is underway, you can just click on portfolio project directions there. It's also located in week 1. Okay, just going to click through so you guys can see. And then week 1 also has that same resource analysis template. What, bunny? Sorry, I'm having a toddler interruption. Okay. He is 11 days from turning 3. I keep asking him, what kind of like cake do you want for your birthday? What kind of balloons do you want for your birthday? And he tells me superheroes. He's really big in superheroes right now, but also Scooby-Doo and Mickey Mouse. And like, so we're going to have a superhero Scooby-Doo Mickey Mouse birthday for him somehow. But, okay, so were you able to find the document, Michelle? Okay, good. And then, oh, Haley's gone. Okay, well, hopefully Haley was able to also find the documents and follow what we were covering. I don't know if she just is having a connectivity issue. Hopefully she'll be back. But yeah, that document it's important to know how to get to, because you're going to want to go back to that, obviously, as you're working through the assignment for this week, but also for week 5 when you do the rough draft. It's really going to be something you want to be able to make sure you go back to. Okay, buddy. Okay. Let's see. Oh, Haley said her Skype keeps kicking her out. Sorry, I missed both, and I missed your comment. But okay, we're good. All right. Hopefully she's able to get back in. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yes, that's what to do this week. Yep. Yeah, and like I said, the other 2 things for this week are really little. It's just the check-in, which is just like, how you doing? How you feeling? Like, it's not a significant thing. And then a 10-question true-false quiz. So this week, I mean, the main focus this week is getting that piece of the project done, because the other 2 things are quick, tiny little things. Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's quick, right? Like, there's not that much to it. And the same thing with the check-in. There's not much to it. How are you feeling about your progress? What are your expectations? Like, that's it. It's just yeah. So those are real simple for this week. And then the things for week 2, because week 1 there wasn't anything. Week 1 it was just making sure you read. So the things for week 2, buddy, you got to stop talking to Mama right now, bub. Week 2, you had the reflection. He wants me to play. My husband is missing in action right now. The week 2 things that you need to catch up on, you have 150-word reflection, and that's based on the topic for the week, which was looking at all the various levels of law enforcement organizations, local, federal, and state. But looking at why cooperation is important amongst those levels for Homeland Security. So it's just kind of focusing that, and then just in general, what agency are you interested in and why. So that's your reflection. And then the essay is supposed to be approximately 550 words. So that one was last week. That's the private versus public police essay. And when you go into the link for that, it gives you the template. This is always, it gives you the directions, but the template will open. So again, I clicked on the week 2 essay, and yep, that's what I clicked on. I clicked on the directions, and that's what this document is. Yep. Yeah, no. Yeah, it makes sense. Yep, so I got into, no, that's okay. That's okay. So I just clicked on the link, the essay directions and rubric from week 2 is what I clicked on. So then it gives you the directions again there, but the other piece it gives you is the little icon here, the private versus public policing icon, that is the template. So those are so important because it gives you where you can just fill in the cover page. And then it also gives you an outline of how you can structure your essay. But the directions also has this additional resource that you can use. So instead of only having, there is information in the lecture, so you can use the lecture. But this is an additional resource that talks about private security versus public police, and that, of course, is the entire topic of the essay. This part. Oh, this thing? Oh, okay. That's nothing's happening there. You might have to hold down the control button and then click on it. Try holding control and clicking. I'm not positive. Again, it's different. Yeah, did I open it? For me, I can double click and it'll just open, but you might have to hold the control button. Not working? All right, let me. Yeah, oh, you said you have a Chromebook or something, right? Just trying to figure. You know, I get it. And that's this time is totally fine for us to try to figure this out. Let's see. Okay, and so Haley, this is, I saw that Skype was kicking out. This can be helpful to you too, Haley, just learning how to navigate these different things so that you know how to get into like the templates and use the additional resources that are provided. So this is for the week 2 essay that we're talking about. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell me when someone comes in, so I don't know how much of this you've been able to see. But so this here, yeah, for me, I double click it. I was looking to see if I right click, if anything. Again, I have a different kind of computer too, so I'm not sure. Let me know if your tablet works, Michelle. But this, getting into this will open, this is what it will open. It opens the template that has the cover page for you and an outline for the essay. And I can try something if it's not working. Let me try something. I'm going to try something and see if I can post it in the announcements. It'll make it easier for both of you to be able to access. Yeah, let's see. It's not letting me save it for the moment, but I'm going to see if I can put it someplace else in Blackboard for you. I'm going to see if I can get it into an announcement. But let me see if I can actually. I'm hoping I'll be able to find this in my downloads and be able to attach it for you. I think this is it. Yep. Yep. Yes. So when you go into the assignments folder and you see, let's see, I clicked out of it, so I don't want to stop what I was doing there because I'm trying to make it more accessible. I'll show it to you. That's okay. Yeah, so when you go to week 2, then you go to the assignments folder, and this is what gets you into the Word. It says directions and rubric is what you click on first. And then once you see that, it's got the little icon, which I'm hoping I'm able to post this as an announcement for you. Okay. Yeah, it's, oh jeez. All right, well, hopefully, let me see if this works. I'm putting this in an announcement. So hopefully, I'm putting this in right now, so just give it 1 second. Let me see. Hopefully you can open this template for the week 2 essay. And then I'll also send it to the email because you never know. Sometimes you can do it that way. Okay, so I submitted that. So now within the announcements page, I also have that link, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it will open, and there's my email showing me that I sent that to you. Okay. So hopefully this opens the actual template. See if it does in mine. It does not. In mine, it's opening the same document that has this. And it's not letting me save this separately for some reason. I tried, so I'm gonna. I'll have to find out. I don't know how else to access this other than being able to double click on that symbol, this little symbol here. Now, if you right-click and say open, maybe you can right-click on it and a little window will come up and saying open. Try that. We're just trying a few different things because there's other documents or other assignments where you're going to have those, whether for this class or others. So I just want to make sure you. So yeah, try right-clicking. Try just right-clicking and then a menu might come up, and see if open is somewhere in your menu. Yeah, try to do like a right click. I don't know what you're clicking with, so I don't know how to. Yeah, for mine, like I don't have a mouse either, but like the right click, I have to have like 2 fingers touching it when I click, and somehow it knows that. Mommy. Hey, buddy. No, okay. This is the only template that you have to open. The other one's just a link that provides you more information that you can use to write the essay. So, well, I'll try again. No, I mean, it's something, and I'm sure you're not the only one that's having this issue because I've had students, in the past that aren't using the templates, and I don't know if it's because they can't open them or if it's because they just didn't open it or because they can't open it. Because a lot of times I'll put that in my feedback, and then I just keep getting the same things without the template, so I don't know, what the issue is. So I will, when our class is over, I'll try to play around with it some more and see if I can somehow get just the template to save. Maybe if I just fill in part of it, it'll let me save it separately and then post it. So I'll try a couple different things, but yeah, because I don't know. Again, and everybody's, whatever, all the technologies that we're all using are all different too, so it's kind of hard to figure out. Yeah, but all right. So I'm gonna actually I'll try to just I'm gonna delete this announcement because it didn't help. So so if I post another announcement, maybe it will work. But this is the Legal Beagle. This is the link that can help with that essay, with the essay as well. So it talks a little bit more about private security versus public police, and this is just an informative article that will give you more, like I said, give you more information to be able to write the essay. Yep. Yep.
What is this map?
Buddy, I can't play right now, love.
What is this map?
Okay, so let's see.
Map?
This is for Mr. Freeze. Go kind Mr. Freeze. All right, so that covers, so we covered the week 3 assignments. We've covered the week 2 assignments just as a refresher. Any other questions or concerns regarding assignments at this point before we get into our topic of the week, really? Okay, it's hard to believe next week is actually midterm week already, so it's going by fast already. We're in week 3, and that's usually week 3 is when the project starts. It's pretty typical for our courses. So, like I said, for drawing in current events to both our project as well as our topic for this week. I mean, with the project, of course, it's dealing with training and multicultural issues. I'm trying to think of how they word the topic, but you know, it's clearly something that our country needs to address, and it's not something new. But every time, you know, an incident happens, then, you know, you have more awareness, I guess I should say. But there's such a clear need for additional training as a potential for one way to work through, you know, the problems in our police-community relations and the use of excessive force. Now, obviously, not all police officers are bad. Obviously, not all community members are not bad, right? I mean, you have a mix, but everybody needs better training. Nobody can say we don't need any training. Everybody could use training. So even you don't have to just focus training on the officers that are being, you know, written up or that are having personnel complaints, right? Training's for everybody. So, like I said, perfect timing for you to, you know, as students to look at, again, number one, the cultural diversity aspect of training, but then number 2, look at, you know, what other area should be focused on when it comes to dealing with, because this is specifically for ethics and multiculturalism and dealing with a diverse community. So, you know, there are so many different options. I mean, the portfolio project directions gave you a couple examples, but you don't have to use one of their examples. You could look at alternative, what they call non-deadly force or less lethal, the use of less lethal weapons. You could look at defensive tactics. You could look at communication. I mean, that's a huge one. The importance of communication, developing communication skills so that you can use words versus force, which isn't always going to work. But it's something that if training is further developed, perhaps that is something that can diffuse the situation. You can look at what other departments have done. That was one of the topics the things that they asked you to be writing about in the body of the rough draft for week 5. So you can look at things. I mean, NYPD is the largest police force in our nation. That was part of the week 2 lecture. There's like over 34,000 sworn officers in the NYPD. They've done a ton of training. They're not perfect either, by far. We know that they've had many incidents, but they have taken positive action to try to prevent some of those things. some of those actions were court mandated, right? I mean, they had their stop and frisk policy. It was court mandated that they had to go through training and changes, but maybe we can see, has there been improvement? So you can go and look into, what has the NYPD done? What has the Chicago PD done? Because they got some problems. They're the second largest agency, and they've got some issues. So, you can look at some of these larger agencies and see what kind of training they've done. Those are just basic Google searches. I mean, you're just kind of looking online and trying to find some articles, or, you don't want to find blogs. Don't use Wikipedia, don't use blogs. You want to try to find something that's reporting facts, not opinion. That's definitely for any research that you're doing. But, when you're, especially in today where you're dealing with a topic that is so heated, you don't want just somebody's opinion on something. You need to look at, evidence and statistics and facts to try to make good decisions. But so those, again, you just have to pick one, but just today it definitely makes it, I guess, easier to be able to identify what some of those areas of training might be. So let's see. Sorry, too many distractions today. All right. So we're going to start with talking about this week's lecture focuses on both recruiting and training, how you become a police officer. That's the first part, and the police subculture is the second part. And I don't know, we'll probably do the recruitment and training portion today, and then on Wednesday we'll talk about the subculture portion. It is a short lecture. I mean, it's like less than half of what a lecture should be, really, for a week 3. So it's not going to take, a ton of time to cover each of these, but that's why I wanted to make sure I spent enough time going over the assignments. And on Thursday, on Wednesday, we can spend the first part of the class doing the same thing. I mean, hopefully by Thursday you've begun doing some of the work for this, but that way you can maybe have more focused questions or concerns that you can raise. But I'll start class on Wednesday the same way by saying, okay, well, I mean, I'm not talking about the quiz or the check-in again, because those are two simple things. But, where are you struggling with starting your training plan description and your resource analysis? What can I help you with? We'll start with that on Wednesday, and then I'll just give you a quick sneak preview of the week 4 assignments, which, I mean, you have a midterm. That's always part of week 4 for the most part. So we'll talk a little bit about that for week 4. But we'll do the sneak preview, and then we'll talk about subculture. Because not only does recruitment, hiring, training, that plays a role in how an officer becomes, who they are as an officer, but so does the subculture. And whether you realize it or not, you will on Wednesday, we witnessed police subculture in action in the George Floyd case, with the 3 officers who have not yet been arrested. That I'm sure they are still conducting an investigation. They made a much faster arrest for the main perpetrator because it was, his physical actions were so clear, and they needed to react to that. Don't believe that the other 3 are in the clear just because there hasn't been an arrest. I mean, I believe one of the press conferences said that the arrest of, I don't even remember the cop's name, but his arrest was one of the fastest arrests of a police officer. So fast is not always good when it comes to an investigation, but his was very clear. So they made that arrest very, based on the clear action. But don't think that those other 3 officers are just going to walk away. It's not over. Investigations take time, and when they want to make sure they get it right so that, everything is done properly for the court system. So don't think that those 3 that it's over. It's definitely not. But I bring them up because they're going to be examples that I use when discussing the police subculture on Wednesday. Yep. That's okay. Well, I don't know what the statutes are in Minnesota. So we have to start there. Is there? Every state statutes are different. So from what I understand of their statute, what they count as third-degree murder in New York State, it would be considered second-degree murder. So they might just, the wording of their statutes are different. I don't know. I think they said the maximum for their third-degree murder is 25 years, maybe. Again, their laws are different, so I don't fully know Minnesota law, but I think their third-degree murder, because basically what he's being charged with is depraved indifference murder. I literally am just like, I think I mentioned I'm writing the criminal law and procedures course, and I was writing this portion of the lecture yesterday. So depraved indifference murder is when your actions are grossly reckless, taking huge risks, basically, that gravely, sorry, I'm trying to make sure I get that cause a grave risk to human life. So it's not an intent to kill, but it's actions that are highly likely to cause death, which is why it's still murder, even though there's not an intent. And so I think that's, and I believe one of the press conferences they may have mentioned this. I haven't watched every press conference because I don't have time to watch that much of the news, but it would be, when you're talking about a standard of proof of beyond a reasonable doubt, it would not be likely that they'd be able to get a conviction for intentional murder. His actions were horrific, but to prove that he had an intent to kill is going to, beyond a reasonable doubt, proving intent to kill beyond a reasonable doubt can be much more difficult or near impossible than being able to prove what we call depraved indifference to human life or reckless disregard for human life, where even if he didn't have the intent, his actions were so reckless that it was highly likely someone would die, which of course that happened, and he didn't care. He disregarded that risk and did it anyway. So that, I think, will fairly, I don't know if any case is easily proven because it's so difficult in courts today, but in this case, he'll probably end up taking a plea deal. He'd be crazy to go to trial because he's going to get convicted. I mean, let's face it. His actions are visible to everybody. No, I don't think anyone has come forward to protect him and say he was justified in any way, shape, or form. So, he's going to get convicted. So, but yeah, their statutes are just different than ours. So in New York State, if he was charged, it would be murder second, because it would still fall under that depraved indifference murder. It's just our statutes are structured differently. First-degree murder has very specific circumstances that his actions wouldn't meet. Like, usually it requires, well, the first-degree murder is always intentional, so again, that's just going to be really difficult to prove that he had the intent to kill. But there are usually additional circumstances in addition to intent for first-degree murder. So it just, regardless of the jurisdiction, as awful as his actions are, it wouldn't meet first degree in any of them. And like I said, if his exact actions occurred in New York State, it would be second degree. It's just every state has different ways of defining things. But that does make a difference for sentence. I mean, in New York State, for second-degree murder, the sentence is a potential of 25 to life, where I'm pretty sure I heard them say his max would be 25. I'm pretty sure I think, I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure I heard on one of the news stations that the maximum sentence is 25 years. So, but yeah, I mean, that the legal aspect is always, of course, based on that jurisdiction's laws, and, they're kind of stuck with what exists, Do you guys have any other questions about what's going on? Because I definitely, here, I'll do my best to answer them. I'm not an expert, and like I said, I don't know Minnesota. But sure, yeah. This is a hot topic. I don't, that lessens it, but yeah. Oh, that's a problem. Mhm. 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 Right. Yeah. Right. Right. Yep. Mhm. Yeah, I agree. Mhm. Yeah, no, I totally understand. Yeah, I definitely understand that. But the unfortunate part is when the law is written in a particular way and those circumstances don't, it's like a puzzle piece. I mean, it's so difficult to actually prove criminal cases, and especially with the CSI effect. I think we mentioned that briefly in one of our classes, but it's so difficult to prove cases, and the law is very, very specific. So as horrific as what we saw occurred, it needs to, those puzzle pieces need to fit together with the wording of the law. And again, I don't know Minnesota law, so I don't know what the exact wording is for their first or second degree murder statutes. I've never looked at Minnesota law. So all I know is the same as everybody else based on what they tell us on TV, which is not always accurate either. But yeah, you're absolutely correct in that the fact that, the length of time, the fact that he went unconscious, the fact that people are telling him he can't breathe, he's unconscious, he's not moving. I mean, everything we've all seen, right? We've all seen it all. It is, you can't, there's no way to fathom to understand how somebody can continue doing that. There's no answer. There really isn't. And this, I know that it's not a local investigating agency that is involved in this. They do have the federal agencies investigating, so they're, I don't know, less biased, unbiased, because they're not connected with that department in any way. So you know what I mean? They don't have their own department investigating it. But yeah, it is unfortunate, but yeah, that just goes back to how the laws are written. And if the law says it requires this, this, or that, and they can't, those those puzzle pieces don't fit, even though it sounds, again, because we hear third degree murder just makes it sound like it's not that serious because it's third degree. Like it sounds like it should be something, obviously more. But again, regardless of the fact that third degree makes it sound like, well, what more did this guy have to do to get to first and second? The way the statutes are written must have had some other form of requirements. I mean, that's the only way I can explain it, just because with what limited information we do have regarding Minnesota law. But I understand your feeling, because that, it's just like when we there's a certain section that I teach regarding accomplice liability, and students usually have very similar types of issues with how that works. And I say, but that's, you always have to just go back to the law. And if we don't like the way the law is written, you have to go back to your legislators to get them to change the law. You can't, and it's not going to have an impact on current issues. That's only going to impact cases in the future. But, maybe that's something they need to look at then is, okay, well, obviously, we can't change the law now and then apply it to this case. That violates the Constitution too. But you can go back to your legislators and say, look, this should have been something more serious. We need to look at how we can change our law to include this type of behavior as a higher level offense. I mean, it's not, like I said, it doesn't help for this instance, but it's something that if that's a concern, that's the next step, I guess, So, yeah, I mean, this is, I don't even know what to say to kids anymore, because they're living through so many different things that hopefully their children never have to live through. It's crazy. And then, like I said, the other officers involved, and the video you're mentioning, I briefly saw a snippet where it shows them like something happening in the back of the police car. Yeah, and they did just show, and it was hard to, I mean, you can't see what's happening in the car. It just shows, I mean, which doesn't make sense. Like, so I'm sure, again, that's why they can't bring all the other charges yet, because they're still trying to figure it all out. I mean, that video was just released to the public. Obviously, they can't release everything to the public. Some of the things that are, were made public right away because it was not, it was private citizens that took videos and things like that. But, investigations have to be conducted in a way that, not everything's released to the public immediately. So, they have to look into what happened. And like I said, those other officers don't. One thing I don't think is being made clear is they're still being investigated. It's just that they have to put all the pieces. They have to put all the pieces together to see what laws they can place them. Do they also get charged with third-degree murder just like the other guy, or is there a lesser charge? Should they be charged with manslaughter? What? And again, I don't know their laws in Minnesota. There's always similarities, amongst all the states, but until they have all the details, I'm sure they're discovering more and more footage. I'm sure there are cameras from outside of buildings. It's not just people with cell phones. I'm sure that they are, just gathering and sifting through information and getting more information from witnesses and whatever. I don't know if the officers had body cams. I don't know if there was a dash cam. We just don't. There's so much that we don't know that I'm sure they're still discovering. So, but it's something that we're all going to, and especially those of us interested in the criminal justice system, are going to keep an eye out for. And we have had some positive response. I mean, the rioting and the looting. I mean, I saw. Actually, a Bryant Stratton graduate. He was one of my criminal justice students. He was part-time, so I feel like I had him for like 5 years because he was a part-time student at the South Towns campus, and I had him for like every CJ course because he would only take like 2 at a time, and he really took his time to get through the program because he was already working full-time. Like, it wasn't his biggest priority, but we've remained in contact over the years. And he has his own business. He always has. And his business was, a lot of damage was caused in the city of Buffalo, and his business was one of them. And he's a minority. He's actually from, I'm trying to remember, the Middle East. I can't remember which country for some reason right now off the top of my head, but he's from the Middle East. And he said, I didn't do anything. I'm a minority, and now my business is trashed. And then, so he's like, the rioting and the looting is harming our community members. And so he was saying how upset he was about that. But at the same time, then he had a follow-up where he had other members of the community come to help him with repairs and cleanup and things like that, which we saw, right? We did see some of those things of the community coming together. We saw, I think the Buffalo chapter of Black Lives Matter put out a statement, I believe, that said, that it wasn't members of their group that was doing right? Yeah, like they put out, and they came and helped. Yeah, like they came out yesterday to help with the cleanup as well. So it's tough because you have people who are committing riotous or not peaceful protest type actions, like those that aren't doing it for the right reason. You do have what they call rebel rousers, people that are there just to cause, I don't know, disruptions. But then, but you luckily do have those that come out, and you have those positive stories of, and law enforcement don't agree either. Mhm. 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 Right. Yeah. Right. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yep. Mhm. Yeah. Absolutely. Mhm. Mhm. Yep. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Sure. Yep. Yeah. Everyone coming together. Yes. And that's what we need to see. We need to see more of that. And there's some, and there's definitely some balance. I mean, you're seeing a little bit of some of the positive things, like they're showing the officers hugging with the demonstrators, the sheriffs that are walking. I know they've been focusing a lot on this Minnesota sheriff who took off all his tactical gear, and the crowd started chanting "Walk with us," and he did. He walked with the protesters without any of his gear on, but they did that in Niagara Falls. In Niagara Falls, yeah, you had the sheriff, you had the chief of the city of Niagara Falls. So you're seeing more of that. That I think that's important as well. Not just all races coming together, but the police coming together. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love seeing every people coming together, and that's what I think the violence tears that down. But the cleanup, you see the people coming together again. I mean, hopefully, you don't. And luckily, in Buffalo, we had the one bad night, but yesterday was good. So the protest can continue, the peaceful protest can continue day to day. But when people are following the curfew, which hopefully won't be necessary. They said hopefully they won't even need a curfew tonight because the protests have remained peaceful and keep coming out every single day, and that's fine. But destroying, especially today, where a lot of businesses that are destroyed belong to the community. They're small business owners, so you're destroying the livelihood of members of your own community, black, white, Asian, whatever it is, but they're members of your community, and the employees of that business are members of that community too. So you're just bringing down your own people. So Mhm. Yep. Yep. Mhm. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Mhm. Right. And maybe this is something where, and I love Mayor Brown. I think he's done so much, and Darius Pridgeon too. Darius, he actually, I can't remember how many, at least two, if not three, Bryant Stratton graduation ceremonies. Darius Pridgeon was our speaker, or like the commencement speaker or whatever. He's amazing. I love him. He has no idea who I am, but I sit on stage with him when he's doing his speech. I'm like, yes, he's just so inspiring, but he's fair. He's also a fair person, and his eyes are open, and I feel like that's a part. There's so much divisiveness, and that's what we need, are people that their eyes are open, and that they see the good too, and it's not just the constant negativity, which is part of the problem. So maybe one of the things, just to tie it back into the first half of our lecture topic, is that this will when it comes to like I said, this is not, there's nothing to be sorry about, because everything we're talking about is very closely related to our topic, not only this week, but this is a policing course. I mean, you can't just ignore current events. You can't ignore a major event in our country. I mean, it happened in Minneapolis, but this is a worldwide. This has caused worldwide attention. Yes, and South America, South America too. I don't know if it was Brazil, but somewhere it literally has gone worldwide. And it's about solidarity and recognition of equality and things like that. So, I mean, we're not off track talking about this. This is what this course is about. I mean, we're talking about about what we can do to better policing. So, I mean, the title of this course is Law Enforcement and the Multicultural Community. That's the full title for this course. So everything we're talking about is completely valid and relevant. But just to tie it in more specifically for this week is looking at hiring and training. So with hiring and training of police officers, maybe this will inspire some younger people to and I'm just looking, they made corrections in one part but not another. This should be 21 years of age. You have to be 21 to be a police officer. I know this says 18, but that is wrong, and I'm pretty sure if you look at the Microsoft Word version of the lecture, I'm pretty sure that was corrected to 21. Yep, it is. So they corrected the Word version, but they didn't correct the whatever this is called, the Articulate version. So the Microsoft Word version is is corrected, because I fixed that. You have to be 21, not 18. But still, if you can inspire young people to think, I want to be a police officer because I want to be better, because I want to be part of the change. One of my, another Brighton Stratton graduate, she graduated from the Buffalo campus. She's a lieutenant in the Buffalo Police Department now. And she's another, there are a few students from over the many years that I remain in contact with. And she wrote something the other day about, she was actually out there on Saturday night. And for the most part, she had to maintain her post. But she's a lieutenant, so she has people that work below her, right? But officers that work below her. And she said, when she became a police officer, she told her children she wanted to make her little corner of the world a better place. And she said it's such a struggle because there are a lot of law enforcement officers that support not the officer, that support the fact that the officer was wrong in what he did. I mean, I don't, like I said, I don't, it's not like, oh, police are on the other side, that police say he was an officer, so we support him. I haven't heard one officer come out and try to protect this guy. Like, it'd be crazy to even it, right? So even though, like, she's a female police officer, which is not easy. She's a female lieutenant in the police department. But she says her heart breaks for George Floyd and his family and that community. But at the same time, she now needs to protect her community and her officers that are within, her, I don't know what they call their group or whatever, below her as a lieutenant. Because you have people that, I saw and I'm a huge animal lover, somebody threw a brick and it hit a police horse in Buffalo, and they had to have, try to get the horse out of the way to try to provide first aid that hit the police horse right in its face. So you've got this horse that's bleeding. And it's just, you have all this, the violent part of it that is difficult, because then, you have police, you're going to have police, this goes back again into our topic for this week, you're going to have police cynicism strengthen in some aspects, because you're going to have officers that say, well, they're not in Buffalo. Like I said, we had the one tough night, but you have in other areas of our country, you're going to have areas where the police don't want to go. They're going to say, we don't want to be there anymore because their lives are in such danger, and they have wives or husbands and children, and they're afraid to do their job because there's now, there's so, again, in the violent aspect, not peaceful protests, but where there's violence, they're worried that they're going to be killed, and they support George Floyd and his family. You know what I mean? So, there's this conflict that officers feel as well, because they understand why it's happening, but they start fearing for their lives even more than the average day, because there's so much anger and resentment towards law enforcement in general. So it makes it very difficult, and that makes it difficult, and again, tying it back into our lecture for this week, makes it difficult to recruit officers, because some people say, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be hated because I'm an officer. I don't want to put my life on the line because I'm a police officer. So in some instances, these types of situations drive people away from this profession because they're afraid. But it also, like I said, can be something where maybe we could get some young people to say, I want to make a difference. I want to try to come in and be a better officer, because they're not training officers to do what that officer did. That is not police training. No department. It is not. It is not. And because somebody, my husband is following everything very closely, and someone said to him, it's hard, right? Yeah, he gets so angry, and yeah. Mhm. 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 The negativity, yeah, that negativity can be, it can be dark, yes. But, if somebody said to my husband, well, we have to look at training, and he said, no, you don't. No officer, because somebody was trying to say that maybe that was part of their training, and that's why my husband got angry. He said, no, that is not part of any department's training. So, so that, there's, he's a retired police officer, and he's saying, no, that no one gets trained to do that. That is against department training. There are protocols in place. There are types of, holds and restraints, different techniques. That's not one of them. So that was like in the first day where they were still conducting an investigation, different videos were coming out, everything was coming out, but he's right from the start when he saw it, he was like, absolutely not. So, those are things that, if there's frustration where other, again, law enforcement officers are saying, no, we don't agree with that. We have to stand out and protect the communities. We have to protect the businesses from rioters, from looters. We're not standing here defending that officer. We're standing here protecting the community from any potential violence that could occur during this. So that, and I think there are a lot of protesters that understand that. But then there are others that see that police presence as a threat or as supporting the officer, which is not what that is. So I'm just gonna, yes. Mhm. Yes. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Mhm. Yes. Yep. Right. Yeah. People that are doing the most violent stuff or looting and stealing the most. This isn't like they've never ever done anything bad in their lives. Now suddenly they're turning into criminals, like because it's yeah, yeah, right, absolutely. Well, let's just look at a few of the things, parts of the hiring process, because these are things that, even though I mentioned your project is focused on people that have already gone through the academy, so you're looking at training current officers, not offering different kinds of training in the academy. I do just want to talk about some of the things that occur during the hiring process, so that even though it's not part of your project, again, with everything that's going on today, you can think, well, maybe we can do this for recruiting, or maybe we could do this as part of the process, the hiring process, to weed out officers that maybe shouldn't be. I did hear, and again, I hear snippets because I'm usually like multitasking, doing a million things. I did hear something, yeah, I heard something that officer shouldn't have been hired to start. Now, I don't know like I said, I just heard like, it was like a background, the news was on in the background, and I just happened to hear something like that, so I don't know anything beyond that. But I did hear something that this guy never should have been hired to begin with. And that's one of the things we have to look at in the hiring process, is how do we weed out people that shouldn't be police officers? So I'm not going to, I pulled up our lecture for the week just to kind of have, an outline, but you start with the written tests, the civil service tests. So now, even just to get to that point, like I said, this has a typo. It's supposed to be 21, but if you look at the Word document, those have all been edited. You have to be 21, you have to be a U.S. citizen, you have to have a clean criminal record, driver's license, the basic things. Some agencies, many, require some college credits. How many college credits depend on the agency. Some require 30, some require 60. At the federal level, they're going to require at least a bachelor's degree or higher. So it just depends on the agency. But one of the reasons for that college education requirement goes back to what was discussed at the project, where they were talking about training, but it goes to education as well. Officers with higher education they make better decisions. They have fewer complaints against them. They use force less. So there's a lot that goes into education. It doesn't have to be a criminal justice education. Any kind of college level education is an improvement for police officers. And In Buffalo, they actually eliminated the college credit requirement a few years ago, so it'll be interesting. I know there are studies being done to measure. They eliminated the college credit requirement to try to increase the diversity of the police force. So it'll be interesting to see, first of all, did eliminating that college credit requirement increase diversity? Did it meet its goal? Because that was the whole purpose. But on the other side, did they start having more complaints against officers? Did they start having more excessive force problems? Like some of the things that we know education can prevent, did we start having an increase in some of those problems because of the lack of education? Or maybe they eliminate that education requirement, and I don't know if they've done this, but what maybe they should do is have more training then, especially in communication. We used to have like a communications class. I don't remember what it was called, public speaking or something. It's from years ago, but that's so helpful, learning to communicate with others, because it's about, and the words keep escaping me. If my husband was downstairs, I would ask him, but it's like calming the situation. For some reason, the phrase isn't coming to mind right now, but there's like a phrase of how they it's going to drive me crazy. But they can communicate in a way to diffuse, a problem, so that it doesn't escalate. De-escalation tactics. There were de-escalation tactics. Those are types of things where it's communication to try to dissipate a situation before it gets violent or, before it gets worse. So those types of trainings, can be helpful as well. And maybe de-escalation is something that it could be a training topic, for the project, because that would be something that would definitely be post-academy as well. But those are all areas where, they have to, focus on some of those once somebody becomes an officer or during the academy process. But I'm just going to quickly go through some more of these steps of the hiring process, because we don't spend a whole lot of time on this, but I'm not going to open up all these little plus signs, but if you went through and clicked on all these, it gives you a little bit more information. But you do have to take a written test, a civil service type test, and then they take like the top scorers in order to put together a class for the academy. There is a physical assessment, that's like doing sit-ups, push-ups, running. Everybody has, like, each department is a little bit different. There are some basic standards, but some of them do things that are more like role play, realistic. Like you may have to drag a body a certain distance, because in real life you might have to do that, or you might, it's just some of them try to make it more realistic, and some of them just say, okay, you have to do this many push-ups in this time frame, this many sit-ups in this time frame, this run a mile and a half in this many minutes, or whatever. So some of them are just something more structured like that. There is an oral interview process. You're going to have to sit and be able to communicate and demonstrate that why you want to be a police officer and what you'll bring to the department, that kind of thing. But the most expensive and time-consuming portion of the hiring process is the background investigation, because that's where they're going to weed out a lot of people. I mean, each of these steps along the way, they're weeding people out, right? The written test, people that can't pass the written test, they're weeding out. Physical test, you can't pass the physical test, you're not going to be able to do the things you need to do as an officer, you're going to get weeded out. Interviews, the first time you're communicating with some of the officers, and if they get a bad vibe or you don't communicate well at that level, you're not going to communicate well with people in the street, so they're going to weed people out there. The background investigation is very expensive and very time-consuming, because they're going to get rid of a lot of people at that point. So they are going to, and I've been interviewed for students' background investigations, as students are getting hired, and they've put me down as a reference. And there was one guy, I sat with him for like 45 minutes to talk to him for one of my students, and she actually had like a choice of jobs. She ended up staying and getting her BBA after getting her Associates in Criminal Justice, and she had like 3 or 4 different job offers. Like, she worked hard and she did really well, and like she was able to make a choice for herself, which is great. But the background investigations, it's no joke. They are interviewing your friends, your family. They're going into looking at old neighbors. They're going to talk to employers or teachers. They have a person that goes out and reaches out and Sometimes they'll just do it on the phone. Like I've had a couple investigators that'll just talk to me on the phone. Others want to actually meet in person, and I'm like, man, for me, this is kind of a pain in the butt. Like my schedule's a little crazy. If I can just talk on the phone, that's one thing. But there are certain investigators like we really need to meet in person. I'm like, oh my god, okay, but that's part of that process. And again, they're trying to make sure that they're investing in officers that are going to be good officers. I mean, it's not like they want a bad egg, right? Nobody wants to get the rotten apples. So they do go through that. And obviously, again, every department's different. So you're going to have some agencies that spend a lot more time in their recruitment and hiring, and others that are not as fussy. So you're going to, it depends on how many positions are open and how many people want that position. And so that's going to make a difference. But most departments do have polygraph exams as well. First of all, if you're going to lie, you're not going to get the job. You have to be able to have integrity. You have to be able to testify in trial and be believable. And if you lie just to get the job, you're not going to get the job. I mean, that's all there is to it. And then once you get through the polygraph, they'll do a basic medical exam, and that's like, okay, maybe they find out you have a heart condition, you're not going to be able to do the job, right? That's just like the most, a very basic medical screening to make sure that you are physically capable. Of course, they're going to do a drug test. That's no big surprise. That will continue throughout your career as well. They do random drug screening. Hopefully you're not on drugs while you're trying to become a police officer. That's not going to bode well. And then the final step before going into the academy is the psychological exam. And I guess there are agencies that don't do these yet, according to the textbook. But, I mean, I think any agency that does not do a psychological would be crazy. But they need to, that's going to help screen, the different types, how officers are going to make decisions in difficult situations. So, I mean, it's not like, are you insane? I mean, hopefully if they've made it to a psychological exam, they can tell that the person's not insane. They just need to say, like, what your decision-making process would be in different situations. They could give you, like, fact patterns and scenarios. And, I mean, if you have, like, high anxiety, you're probably not going to be a good police officer. Like, maybe you have clinical anxiety, and the psychological exam is able to determine that. You get put in these difficult situations, and if you have a panic attack, like you're putting yourself in danger, you're putting other civilians in danger, you're putting other officers in danger. So it's not just the medical exam for the physical health, but that psychological exam is going to help determine whether you're capable of doing the job as well. I'm going to scroll through. I mean, everyone is different. They're like I said, really trying to assess how you'll be able to react under stressful circumstances, how you'll be able to, I mean, a lot of officers have to make split-second decisions, so they need to know, like, how are you going to be able to handle that? Is it something, so like specific questions, I don't really know. I don't have like examples of specific questions they would ask. I should see if my stepdaughter, when she went through screening, like what kind of things they asked her for the psychological, she might be able to give me some insight into that with Secret Service. But yeah, I'll see if because I don't know the specific types of questions. I'll see if she can. I'm sure my husband will be talking to her soon because she's in Chicago, and she's Secret Service in Chicago, and I think she said like 20 Secret Service agents were injured in Chicago because they've had some bad stuff going on there too. So luckily she's been on desk duty, not desk duty, I forget what they call it, but she basically is like for a week has to be on taking phone calls. They rotate through, so I guess for her it's kind of lucky and it's lucky for my husband that she's just answering the phone at the desk for the week. That's her duty right now. So usually a Secret Service, like it's really not like she's just doing a lot of investigations, like a lot of stuff on the computer, or they have to do stakeouts and stuff like that. But it's not as high risk. But during something like this, it's all boots on the ground, so everybody's at risk. So that definitely is more concerning. But one last thing for today, I just want to briefly talk about the academies. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but once you make it through all those different parts of the hiring process, then you would go into your police academy and then go into field training. And academies this is one area where my husband, based on everything that's going on, said maybe one of the answers would be to have standardized training at an academy. I mean, every agency is different. So you have training, like New York State Police, and I somewhat biased because my husband's a trooper, but being involved in the system, or he was a trooper, but being involved in the criminal justice system and having contact with so many different police agencies over the years, I believe it's true that the training at the state police level is so good. Like their academy is 6 full months. And they do, and then like my stepdaughter would say the same thing, that that level of training is so outstanding. You don't have as many problems. You don't have as many problems when it comes to like civilian complaints, excessive force. I'm not saying it's zero, but much fewer than you have at a lot of the urban departments. And so maybe if they nationalized some police training, and maybe they have 4 different academies or 5 or 6. So that geographically, the material they present is the same, but they have one in the northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest, and then like the Midwest area, like north and south areas there. So they've kind of got, different locations for the academies all over the country, but the material is always presented the same. So all police go through these academies, and that way they all have experienced the same training, and maybe they all have different follow-up type things that it would be the same. So all police are getting this kind of training. It'd be an interesting thing to consider. I mean, it would be a huge change within law enforcement. But it's tough because right now we have all different. I mean, you have some police agencies where you go for like 12 weeks and now you're a police officer. Like 12 weeks of training and now you're carrying a firearm and you're on the street. Like that's not And you might not have an education either. So now you have no education and 12 weeks of training, and you're a cop on the street. I mean, you're not prepared. You're not prepared enough. So we have all of these different types of academies, and you have some that are like in-house, where like New York State Police, they run their own academy. Only troopers go to that academy. So it's an in-house where they train their own people and they have their own hiring standards, and that's it. Then you have more regional academies. I think we have regional academies in our area, like there's Erie County and Niagara County that have their own academies, but like some of the towns and villages will send their police to the county academy. So it's more regional. So like, I don't know, Orchard Park, Amherst. I'm assuming that I think their officers just go through whatever the county academy is. And same thing in like the North County or the Niagara County area. Like I think they all go through the Niagara County Academy. I think that those are the regional ones. And then some states have academies where all the officers within that state go through it. We don't have that, but where they would have all the city, town, village agencies, they all go through the same academy. We don't have one of those, but that would be like a state-run academy, not like the state troopers, but the actual the state runs the entire academy for all police. So we don't have that. But and then this last part talks about all the different things that are taught in the academy. And again, I'm not going to open all these up, but you can go through the lecture and look at all these aspects in more detail. But there's academics where that's like being in the classroom, and they're going to learn about how to write reports. They're going to learn about communication. They're going to learn about investigation techniques and procedures. But that's like the textbook part. They do learn about human relations, but this is the area where more training needs, is kind of going into the area where we're talking about more training. So there's diversity, sexual harassment, disability, hate crimes, all sorts of areas within human relations they may have to deal with. Obviously, they have a lot to learn about the law. I'm not going to go through all the areas. I'm opening them, but I'm not going to read them all. Lots of areas about the law that they need to learn about, especially if they have no education in the law, which most of them don't. They're going to learn about different tactics they have to use, how to drive the patrol car, what kind of tactics they're using while patrolling. It's not just driving around. You're making observations as you're patrolling, what to do when you stumble upon a crime in progress, how you conduct searches, how you deal with vehicle stops. And, of course, there's going to be use of force tactics as well, because not all force is wrong. I mean, law enforcement officers have to deal with people all the time where force may be necessary. It doesn't mean it's deadly force. It just means that enough force may have to be used to stop whatever was in progress. So they'll learn about that. They'll take defensive driving. That was one of my stepdaughter's favorites. She loves, and my husband too, driving the course, learning how to safely drive a vehicle in a way that most people don't. Firearms training, I mean, just the fact that there are agencies that only have 12 weeks total of the academy, and just a small piece of that is firearms, is crazy to me. But it's not just guns today. It's, even though it's called firearms training, it's also the less lethal weapon training. So it could be tasers, pepper spray, different like pressure point tactics, like and defensive movements physically. So there's going to be a lot more than just the guns themselves. And then you're also going to have physical training, which is going to deal with arresting techniques, how to use self-defense without a weapon, you know, and also just working out so you build your strength and endurance. That's all going to be part of your academy. And once you finish that, you'll be on field training, which was the last thing I wanted to cover today, which really just field training is on the job where you're, you know, okay, you went through the academy, you learned all this, now you're going to have an officer that basically is with you for a period of time. How long that period of time is depends on the department. Again, that varies from agency to agency. It says anywhere from 2 to 12 weeks, which is a huge difference, 2 weeks compared to 12. But you will be with a field training officer for that period of time, where, you know, they can make sure that you can put what you've learned into action on the streets. So that's really how far I wanted to get today. Making sure I wanted to talk about current events, I wanted to talk about the project, and also just make sure I covered the hiring, training, and police academy. So on Wednesday, we'll cover subculture, and we'll still continue to talk about current events, whether it's something that occurs between now and Wednesday, or even the things, like I said, I will be discussing the actions of the other officers during the police subculture discussion. That's definitely, I didn't get into them too much today because I want to, their action or inaction is part of what I wanted to bring up with police subculture. So any questions or any other comments? All right. All right, I'm going to stop screen sharing because sometimes I forget and then my computer messes up. And I'm going to stop recording so I don't forget to do that.